Okay, welcome to our coverage of our final Christmas game. We're playing a scenario about Quatre, and we've got the table all set out here. We're playing just the critical turns of Quatre, so this is from about 3:30 in the afternoon. The Dutch are still holding on in Germancourt farm, but the Dutch 2nd Division has already lost its Dutch-Belgian brigade. They have been driven back off the table by the attacking French force and have fallen back over the stream by Germancourt farm. The Nassau still hold on in Bosso Woods, so you can see down here we've got two large battalions of Nassau troops here hidden in the woods in their green uniforms. Pardon me. And they're backed up by some orange Nassau troops, the 28th Regiment, with also their yellow Nassau flags, and their attached foot artillery brigade, which was supporting them. Also, by this time, the Brunswickers had started arriving on the field. So we have here the 1st Regiment, the light regiment of the Brunswickers, arriving on table. See down here, we've got the Dutch-Belgian Prince of Orange in command, and Perponcher as the divisional commander of the remnants of the 2nd Division here. And then here we have the Duke of Brunswick in command of the Brunswicker troops. There you go. Duke of Brunswick just giving out some orders. And there we have the 3 light battalions of Brunswickers on the table. And then finally Pax Brigade has arrived here. So we have 2 battalions of Highlanders. Let's just check, make sure I get the Highland regiments right. Yeah, the 92nd Gordon Highlanders. And these ones, don't know whether I have. No, I haven't got the names on the bottom of those. 2nd Battalion of Highlanders. I'm sure someone will point out which ones they are. And then we have the 1st Royal Scots and the 44th Essex moving up in support. They are threatened by the approaching divisions of Jerome, who are about to attack the Nassau in Bosso Woods. We've got more of Jerome's division here that might threaten the farm or come across the river against the Brunswickers. And then Charlie ordered his 2nd Division on a wide outflanking sweep, so you can see them approaching the stream from that direction. So we'll see how the game goes. I'll probably just do highlights at the end of each turn and give you an idea of how we win our Christmas game of Quatre, of who wins. Cheers, everyone. Here we are at the end of turn 3 on the game, and Charlie and his French are charging over the stream to try and outflank the British. We've got some British reserves coming on here to offset this attack. These British brigade French brigade's gone hesitant, but we've got skirmishers exchanging fire here. In the centre, I think this was Daniel, has been quite effective, and he's driven off one Brunswick brigade and is approaching the British lines. Got infantry assault here, and has successfully captured Germancourt farm from the Dutch Belgians, who are pulling back across the bridge here in the centre. The French attack on the left has stalled as this brigade went hesitant, and the Nassau are still firmly in charge of the woods. That's where we are at the end of this turn. I'm back in a minute. Right, we're on turn 6, and the French have nearly captured Bosso Woods. They've pushed the Nassauers back, and they're trying to pursue another charge into the right flank here of the Dutch Belgians. So we move across into the centre. The French have captured Germancourt farm and are approaching the Brunswickers. The core of the French attack, however, is here in the centre, where the French lancers have now moved through the French infantry brigades to put pressure on the British here in the centre, and we've got attacking French brigades on both flanks, hoping the British form square. Over here on the right, Charlie's been a bit tactical. He's moved all his troops up, but he's decided he isn't going to charge because the British troops are too good, and he doesn't think he'll get through with this defended position. So we'll see how it plays out. Cheers. Okay, here we are at the end of turn 8. We're taking a break and calling it a day for this evening. We might play a bit more tomorrow. The French and Jerome's division is doing well. They've pretty much cleared the Dutch Belgians and the Nassau out of Bosso Wood. They have lost 1 battalion, but they've passed their Falter test, and Dutch Belgians are pushed back to the edge of Quatre. In the centre, the other part of Jerome's division has been thrown back. Both of the regiments of the right-hand brigade have suffered from failed charges against the Highlanders, the Gordon Highlanders there, and actually against the Brunswickers in the centre. But in the centre, they did inflict enough casualties to cause one of the Brunswick units to implode, and the Brunswick Light Infantry Brigade has failed its fall test. So there's now an enormous hole in the centre as the Brunswickers have vacated that position. In the centre here, unfortunately, Charlie's cavalry, despite having 7 dice to 4 or 7 dice to 3 against the Highlanders, lost their combat and had to fall back into their own lines, and the Highlanders maintain their position and hold a strong British centre. The Allied cavalry did come on here in the fear that the French cavalry would break through, so they're now out of position to support for the Allies, unfortunately, the other side of the table and fill that gap. Over here on the right, the French brigades are moving forward and applying pressure on the British line, but the British volleys continue to cause heavy casualties from the French. Don't fancy the French chances of getting through. When we look at the table at the moment, there's a big problem for the Allies. There's a big gap in the centre, and the French really just need to reform and plunge through it and drive forward with their left flank, and they may have the game sewn up. Anyway, it's been great fun. Charlie and Dan were great players on the French side, and we've had a really good game. Alright, well, back tomorrow, and I'll let you know whether we wrap it there or we play on a bit more. Alright, cheers everyone. Morning everyone, it's next morning and we're resuming our next turn on our Quatre game. It's just going to be Charlie and me today, so 2 friends we had around playing last night have obviously departed, but Charlie and I have decided to carry on the game. So just to give everyone a brief update of where we got to, we've just done the movement, charges and movement on the first part of turn 9. Haven't done the charge moves yet, so we'll do those in a second. We'll probably do those on camera, we'll probably do a bit more videoing. As there's only the 2 of us now. So Charlie again is charged with Jerome's left-hand brigade into the Dutch-Belgian lines there, on the far right flank of the Dutch-Belgians, and he's continued to push forward and push out his skirmish screen to put some pressure on the Dutch-Belgian artillery that's caused problems against the right flank of that brigade. In the centre, the Brunswickers have brought on their cavalry reserve, so we've got a unit of Uhlans and a unit of Brunswick Hussars, and the line infantry are reforming behind them, and the 28th Jaegers have occupied the Quatre crossroads itself. For the French, this brigade is hesitant, so hasn't moved forward, but they have received their heavy cavalry reinforcements, so we've got 2 regiments of dragoons, 2 regiments of cuirassiers that have arrived in the centre here, and we've started reforming the Lancers to allow the undamaged Lancer Brigade to take the lead, potentially reassault the British lines. Over here in the centre, this brigade of French unfortunately is hesitant, but the right-hand brigade of Charlie's division is active and has executed a charge. So that's where we are at the start of turn 9, and we'll do some charge reactions as the French try to charge home. Okay, we'll start with the 79th Cameron Highlanders. They'll do their defensive volley as the French column tries to charge home. Okay, so we roll a 7 and we get an extra casualty from the casualty dice you get for firing at columns at close range. So a 7 for a superior volley is 3 casualties, so that's 4 casualties on that French assault. We'll mark those up and we'll move on to the charge results. Okay, so rolling for the charge, it'll be -2 for the French, reduced to -1 because they have their brigadier attached. For the Highlanders, they will also choose to attach their brigadier to this column, as this one looks the one where the French have the most supports. So that will be -1 for the French and +2 for the British. Well, so the British get a 12, the French get a 5. The British will win, and they will win by more than 6, so that French attack will be thrown back. Okay, next one, we get 32nd Cornwall, I think. Yep, 32nd Foot Cornwall Regiment will open fire at the attacking French battalion. Same volley, superior volley. Not so good this time, 6, and with 1 extra casualty. So for a superior volley is 2, so that causes 3 casualties on the French. And let's see what the charge results are. Okay, so this will be simply -2 on the French because they've taken 2 casualties, 3 casualties charging in. No adjustments on the British. The French get a 5, the British get a 3. The French will try and re-roll the 2. It stays the same as a 5. The British will re-roll a 1. It's a 2. So that's a result of -1. So the French column will stop and will launch a volley at the Allies and cause 1 casualty on the British line. On the far right flank, the Dutch Belgians will open fire against the attacking French column. These will count, they have taken no casualties so far, so this will be a standard volley. And again, they get 1 extra casualty dice. They only roll a 4. So a 4 for a standard volley is no casualty and loss of fire discipline. The 6 does cause 1 casualty on the French, but that won't have too much impact. Let's see how that charge goes. Okay, so in terms of modifiers, the French have now taken 4 casualties, so that's -1 for that, but they are veterans and they have their brigadier attached. So that will take them up to a +1. For the Dutch Belgians, the Perpenche will attach himself, so we'll attach a brigadier to this battalion. So they are steady, so they will also be on +1. So let's roll the result. So it's a straight roll off. The French get 2 supports, the Allies only 1. The French roll an 8, the Allies roll a 9. Tough one. The French do have 2 re-rolls, so we'll see if we can beat a 4, a 3, and a 5. So that's a 9 plays a 9. So that is a draw as it stands at the moment. Now let's see whether the Dutch Belgians will try and re-roll their 3. So on a draw, the attacker grinds to a halt and has to let off a volley. So the Dutch Belgians will not go for a re-roll, and the French volley and have no effect. So they're held off as well here. So not a great turn for the French. 3 charges in and none of them getting to hand-to-hand combat. All right, now time for firing. French go for it. Just completed firing, and it was most impactful at this end. So the French skirmish screen that the Jérôme's Brigade have thrown out have caused another 2 casualties on the Dutch-Belgian artillery. They're now up to 6 and nearly at breakpoint, so they'll probably have to limber up and withdraw next turn. The Nassau skirmisher screen in returns caused a casualty back, and the Dutch Belgians caused a discipline test and 4 casualties on the French column there as it rolled an 11 as a result. And did significant damage to that attacking French column. Over here, otherwise, we've seen an exchange of skirmish fire and artillery fire and musketry, no major impact, and the Brunswick artillery didn't do any major effects. So that's it, that's into turn 9. We'll be back with turn 10. Okay, in turn 10, we've rolled for ADCs and initiative. Both attacking French brigades on the right-hand flank have gone hesitant. All the Allies' formations are active. The Brunswick artillery has got artillery assault off. For the French, we've got forwards orders on both of our cavalry brigades, and Jérôme's division is also active. The Allies have initiative on turn 10, so they will get to charge and move first. Okay, so down here on the Allied right flank, the French have charged forward with a separate full-strength veteran infantry battalion to try and break the Orange Nassau. We'll see how well they do this turn. The Orange Nassau have I tend to do all of the movement when I'm doing a big game on my own rather than do all the charges separately, especially if they're sort of dislocated in space from the charges, so they won't impact one another. So the Dutch Belgians have pulled back their artillery battery here. It's taken 6 casualties, so it was close to breaking point, especially with the French skirmishers threatening it. So the Nassau have deployed into line to fill that gap. So they still have a contiguous front here to try and face off against this French assault. The other French units have formed up and are in charge range to potentially go in next turn now they're not threatened by the artillery. In the centre, the Brunswickers have moved their cavalry forward. The forwards orders have allowed the French cuirassiers to move up and cross the river, and their healthy Lancer Brigade has also moved up across the river, and the other one has reformed in support. Over in the centre here, the French have formed squares in response to the threat from the Dutch-Belgian cavalry. The British infantry made space for them to move forward between the two British brigades. So we've got three French battalions in square there now to face off. And the French actually pulled back behind the small hillock. There are 3 battalions here to take them out of line of fire from the British firing. So we'll come back and now we'll now do the charge results and the defensive volley over at this end of the table. We'll see how that goes for the Dutch Belgians. Okay, so this will be a standard volley. No casualties yet on the Dutch Belgians. They roll an 8 and they get a bonus casualty, so that's pretty good. That's 4 casualties against this attacking French battalion again. No discipline test, but that'll be a tough one for them to charge home. Right, so this will be a net +1 to the Dutch Belgians, given the amount of casualties they inflicted. Wow, that's good for the French. So they're on 4 for the Dutch Belgians and 8 for the French. Now the Dutch Belgians do get a re-roll, so we will try and re-roll this one. See what we get. We get a 6. An 8 versus a 6. The 6, let me just remind myself of the modifiers. I think that's +1 for the Dutch Belgians, so the 6 becomes a 7. And the 8 was unmodified because the French Brigadier and the veteran status overcome the effect of that defensive fire. So on an 8 versus 7, let's see where the charge result takes us. So that's +1. So the French will go in and they will melee with Elan, and the Dutch Belgians become unformed as that charge comes home. Right, firing completed, and this turn the Brunswick artillery did well and they've disordered the French lancers as they approach the crest of that hill, so that disrupts the French attack hopefully next turn. The French artillery fire has also been effective and disordered this British infantry unit, and these infantry battalions here in front of the cavalry continue to take continued drip of 1 to 2 casualties a turn from long range French artillery fire. So some softening up has happened before the French attacks go in. Otherwise everything else remains static. That's it for the end of turn 10, apart from our hand-to-hand combat, which we'll go and do as again the French try and eject the Nassau from Bossau Woods. Okay, so let's roll for this attack. So the French get 7 dice. You got 7 there, Charlie?
No, only 3.
And the Dutch Belgians only get 4 because they're unformed. All right, needing 4s. So the Dutch Belgians get 2.
3, win by.
Okay, so the French win by 1 and they will push those Dutch Belgians. Okay, so we've declared charges. Charlie's been pretty active. He's charged in with this infantry battalion against the Dutch-Belgian unformed line here. The veterans have also charged in against this Nassau battalion, so the attack is definitely reaching a crunch over here. In the centre, the cuirassiers have charged the Brunswick Hussars. The Brunswick Hussars are supported by their lancers. Here, Charlie charged the other cuirassier units against the Highlanders, who did successfully form square. I then charged with my light dragoons against the flank of the lancers unformed on that hill, and then Charlie spotted, and I remembered they were indeed hesitant. So a glorious opportunity to do a flank attack against those lancers has fallen by the wayside as we are hesitant. But I also charged in with this battalion here, but these were also hesitant, weren't they, Charlie?
English.
All the English were hesitant and the light cavalry, so I have to move these ones back. So that's it for the charges. Let's do charge reactions. We'll start in the woods with the Nassau on the flank. All right, let's roll down here. So Charlie has 2 re-rolls because he's got 2 supports, and you're on how much, Charlie?
+1.
+1, because you're veterans and a general, but you do have 5 casualties. I don't have any casualties, but I'm unformed, so I'll be on -2. I roll a 3. That's not great.
I roll a 6.
Okay, so why don't you just check? So you that goes up to an 8, doesn't it, Charlie? So you have 1.
It will be up to 7.
Up to a 7, and I'm on -2, aren't I? So I'm on a 3. So you've won by 4 at the moment, which would be you take the ground and I retreat and take 1d3 casualties.
I do have 2 rerolls. I'm going to reroll one of my
Okay.
threes. I'm going to reroll again. 5.
An 8. So you got an 8. So what does that adjust to?
That it will be
A 9.
a 9.
A 9 against 3, you win by 6. That's victory. You rout me, I cause 1d6 casualties, and you get to do a breakthrough attack. I'll let you go and answer, Mum. Okay, so the other French battalions have charged in against the Nassau here, and they have charged home, so they will be meleeing with a land. The Nassau were unformed. The French rolled a 10, but they're at -2 because the casualties they took on the charge, so they're on an 8, and the Nassau are on a 7. So that will go to a melee, and it's not looking good for the Nassau. The French have broken through, driven the Dutch Belgians off the table. There will be a falter test on the Nassau Brigade already, irrespective of what happens in this hand-to-hand combat. All right, we'll move on and do the charge results in the centre as the cuirassiers go in against the Brunswick Hussars. Okay, so now rolling for the charge by the cuirassiers. So this will be +3 for the French, but the Brunswickers will get a reroll. So the French only get a 6. Well, this looks like quite good. We roll an 8 for the Brunswickers. So the French will go up to a 9 on their +6, which means they win by 1. So they will melee. So we go straight into a melee there. We'll now do the charge against the Scottish Highlander square. Okay, so this one's a straight roll off. The French getting bonuses for being veteran, and the Highlanders for being in the square. French roll a 5, the Highlanders roll a 7. They won't bother with a re-roll. The French haven't got one, and cavalry will retire. They're unable to break the Highland square. All right, we've done most of the firing, no major effects, although Charlie did remarkably well with his skirmishers and put 3 casualties onto this Highlander square. So they're now on 11. Charlie's now opening up on them with one of his artillery batteries. So we'll see what that does. You might get a combat dice, Charlie, because you're firing against a square. I'm not sure whether that happens at long range. In square, you get +2 combat dice. So yeah, let's see. You just need 1 casualty on these to do some damage.
So my my initial shot won't do any casualties.
Right.
5.
Yeah.
My 2 combat dice.
Nothing as well.
Nothing.
So 5 at long range is half a casualty, so you get a 50-50 chance. He does it on the 5th dice roll. That square finally succumbs. So there'll be a falter test on this British brigade. The Gordon Highlanders have been destroyed. Okay, so it's turn for dramatic artillery fire. So the Brunswick artillery on the hill here were successful. They opened fire with artillery assault on the Lancers who just reformed on the hill, and they've driven them off. They caused them to take 3 casualties in a discipline test, and they failed their discipline test, didn't they, Charlie? So they've now fallen back across the river. They were able to use their supporting battalion as something to reform behind, so they haven't gone off table, but they've now taken, what, 8-9 casualties? Yeah, so effectively the threat from the Lancer Brigade has been neutered by the Allies. All right.
This one's still very healthy.
Well, it's still taken 5 or 6 casualties, Charlie.
Yeah, but this one's got 9.
Yeah.
The heavy cavalry's got 2, 0. 6.
Yeah, so the heavy cavalry carrier is still definitely a threat. All right, let's move on to the hand-to-hand combat. We'll start with the cuirassiers. Okay, so rolling for this important melee in the centre. Well, pretty good. 3 casualties by the Brunswickers.
5.
5 by the cuirassiers. Cuirassiers will win and the Brunswickers will flee. Okay, so now rolling the charge against the Nassau. The Nassau do 2 casualties.
4.
2, 4 again, so the French win by 2. The Nassau will have to retreat and will disappear off table. All right, so a good turn for the French. All their brigades have gone active. They had a good set of ADCs. The French heavy cavalry have got a forwards order. The Lancers were also active, weren't they, Charlie?
Yeah.
And then all the other French brigades are active. For the Allies, it's a really tough turn. They only got 2 ADCs out of their 5. They've got to do a falter test on the remaining Dutch-Belgian unit, which is now a broken brigade. All the other Dutch-Belgians have disappeared off the table. And they've also got to do a filter test on that British Brigade, Pax Brigade, I think, yeah, Pax Brigade, following the loss of the Highlanders. And they only have 2 ADCs, so these don't have re-rolls. So we'll keep the suspense going and we'll roll for the other units first, see if they activate. So the Far British Brigade is active, the Dutch-Belgian Cavalry is active, and the Brunswickers are hesitant. So I'll put a hesitant marker on the Brunswickers. Makes sense, given that the Brunswick Cavalry just fled off the table. All right, now let's do the filter tests. We will just get the filter table so I can get the results exactly right. Okay, here we go. So testing Pack, see what happens with him. 6, they obey orders, that's really good for the Allies. And then for the Dutch Belgians, again, that's not cocked. A 2, Savoir qui part. So the Dutch Belgians go, they aren't redeemable. All those table units that have been forced off table with retreat orders evaporate. And unfortunately the 27th Jaeger evacuates the village. So the Quatre itself is now unoccupied and ripe for French occupation. Right, in turn 11, charges have been declared. Charlie put a forwards order on his cuirassiers. He gets 1d6 bonus movement for a charge on top of their 21-inch charge range. And they rolled a 2, which was 23, which was just enough to bring them into the unformed Brunswickers. So they fell back to their own lines. They've reformed and they've charged in against the Brunswickers. They're supported by this flanking element of the Joseph's division, which has charged into this square of Highlanders from their position just across the stream. Otherwise, the rest of the French remained unmoved in their defensive formations, and as a last gasp, the Dutch-Belgian light dragoons have charged against one of the French columns, swinging around the other French squares to try and get a charge in, which they could do within charge range, but they'll take quite a lot of defensive fire. Let's start with the charge reactions for the for the French charges, as France has. All right, this does not look good. The Brunswickers are on -7 and Charlie is on +2, so I think it's the end of the Brunswickers, especially when I roll a double 1.
So you're on -5.
So I'm on -5.
So if you ever get double 1, I'll still be on +6.
Off you go. Okay, so you're on 6. Yeah. You can choose to re-roll a 2 because you've got a support, which you probably want to.
I'm still
5 plus 5, so you're on 10. Yeah. I'm going to re-roll both of mine because I only have a flank support, so I can only roll 1. And I roll a 1, so I'm still on 2. And how many minuses was I? I was on -7.
So you're -5, so I win by
a load. So you won by 6. So you ride down those Brunswickers and you can again, this looks like another tough one for the Brunswickers. They have no support this time and they're on -4. The cuirassiers are still on +2. We roll an 8.
I re-rolled I'm on 8 plus, I re-rolled my 1, so I'm on 2.
Right.
So, wait, I'm on 8 plus 2, so I'm on 10.
But remember you're -1 because of your casualties. Oh no, you're not.
No. And so I'm on 10.
Right.
And then you're on -4, so you're on 4.
Yep, so you win by 6. So you'll blow your way through this other Brunswicker battalion. So the Brunswick Brigade is broken. And the other one, I think, will certainly be subject to a filter test and might well have to flee because its supporting unit was destroyed. Okay, rolling the charge here. The Highlanders are at -1. And I've taken the casualties off. They're on 11. That's pretty good. So they're down to a 10.
I'm going to re-roll.
You're 1. You're on a 10 as well.
So I'm on 11. You're on. It'll be combat.
10. So you win by 2. So you melee with Elan and I melee unformed. We'll do that. Rolling for the cavalry. Unfortunately for the Allies, the French defensive fire was pretty good, and the square and the columns shots have caused 3 casualties on the Allied cavalry, which means it'll be testing at -3 on this charge result. And Charlie, you're testing on +2 because you're in column against a charging cavalry. So I roll a 7. -3 is down to a 4.
I'm going to roll my 1. I'm going to roll my 2. So I'm on 8. +2 is 10.
Right.
You're on -3, so you're on
4. So you win and you push me back. I take a casualty and okay, we've skipped the various different firing because we don't think it'll make a huge amount of difference this late in the game. We're just going to do the assault here as Charlie's infantry charges home against the Highlanders. The Highlanders cause 1 casualty.
I got 4.
And Charlie's caused 4. That will cause the Highlanders to break. Right, at the end of turn 11, we're going to call it there. And as we've suspected when we came back this morning, the French have indeed won, and probably a more resounding victory than I was expecting. So over here on the right flank, the Jerome's division have broken through and broken the Nassau Brigade that was defending the woods. Those closing attacks routing all of the remaining units. Then down here, as part of that Falter test, the garrison of Quatre fled, and the French have simply moved in to occupy it. Down here we had the Brunswick Brigade and Charlie's aggressive playing of the forwards order to have a second attack with the cuirassiers proved really effective, and they broke the Brunswick Brigade, the cuirassiers riding down firstly the unformed battalion that tried to form square and failed, and then crashing into the supporting battalion behind it. Over here in the centre, the British position is starting to crumble. The French have broken a Highlander square, and there will be a Falter test if we were to do it on this brigade. As we move across, the forlorn hope of a counterattack by the Dutch-Belgian cavalry was driven off by the French battalions. So over here on the far left, the British are still in a very strong position. Those battalions are all strong, but Charlie was probably quite wise not to press his attack. He kept enough pressure on that the British weren't able to redeploy, and indeed this flanking attack forced the British to deploy their second really powerful brigade right over on the extreme of the battlefield rather than at Quatre, although they had to hold on to the road. So certainly the British have managed to hold on to the road position, but the fact that all of the British forces are strong out on the left, and Charlie basically didn't go into the meat grinder of the British volleys, has meant that the French didn't take any break tests up here, and have pretty much, if weakened, intact formation, and his devastating use of the heavy cavalry, and his deployment, and Charlie's conscious decision to deploy his veteran division far out on this left flank against the weakest Allied forces, proved really telling. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this game and the bit of extra coverage we've provided of the second half. Have a great Christmas, everybody. This is the last video we're going to pop up before Christmas. Hopefully I'll put it up later today, so we're on the middle of the week before Christmas at the moment. So have a great Christmas, everyone. Thanks for watching all year. Really, really appreciate all your comments and feedback. And we'll try and pop up another video of how we've gone on with painting my Russian figures. I'll put that up a bit later as well. So have a great Christmas, have a happy new year, and please watch the channel as we move on to 2022. Cheers, everyone.